Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Book Drop. My name's Jane Alver and I'm a student here at the Centre for Deliberative Democracy and Global Governance at the University of Canberra. And we're delighted today to welcome Professor Min Reuchamps here, who's visited us all the way from the University of the Catholique de Louvain in Belgium, where he's a Professor of Political Science. So Min, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming all the way to Canberra. So his teaching and research interests are particularly in federalism, and multi-level governance. But what I'm really interested in and what captivated me was when you were talking about your activism and how you balance your activism hat and your academic hat, and that's particularly appealing to me. So we're delighted today to be talking about this new book, which is called The Legitimacy of Citizen-Led Deliberative Democracy, and it's particularly around the G1000 in Belgium. And what I find really interesting for deliberative democrats, it's actually the strength of any democracy is around its public deliberation and how frequent and reasoned its discussions between citizens is. And so what we really want to chat today is about this G1000 idea. What is it, Min?
Well, we need to remember that 6 years ago in 2011, even more than that, there was no government in Belgium. And most people were saying, okay, it's because, the community, linguistic issue between the different communities. And some of us were saying, well, it's not so much about this, but it's rather a democratic questions. It's actually people would like to participate more and they would be able to do so, but we should give them the opportunity to do so. So the G1000 came out of this.
And what is a G1000?
Well, you might know the G8, the G20, for instance. It means a group of countries that are supposed to be very powerful, and we say, well, the power could also go to the people, but the numbers of people, which is important because it brings diversity.
And why was it such a great case study for your book?
Well, because we followed it and we were part of it. So we were both as political scientists, but also as activists, as you mentioned before. So that's why, and it came very much of a grassroots organization. And so it started with a big online consultation, and then 1,000 people were invited in Brussels. From all the communities, from different languages, and then finally a third phase of a smaller panel, a citizen panel of 32 people from the 1,000 came for 3 weekends and discussed and brought policy proposals eventually.
What sort of things did they talk about?
Well, if it was us to decide, we would have said about Belgium and about democracy. But because of this big online consultation, we didn't have a say, which is better. And then this online consultation showed 3 topics: immigration, social security, and distribution of welfare, which is actually the topics that are really interest people. And so they discussed about this.
And so were there any political uptake as a result of this?
That's a good question. It's typically the question we might get. And the first question would say no. There was no political uptake because there was no bills or laws that were passed because of this. But that's only part of the story. What happens is that in many different grounds, there were little G1000 in Belgium, but also in the Netherlands and different countries. This is one thing. Other thing is that it's not because you don't, there is no uptake of the content that you don't like the process. And even for politicians, many mention it as a process. It's a good process. And then in the manifesto, for instance, before and after G1000, there was an increase in terms of support for participations. And then eventually, every parliament in Belgium, and there are quite a few parliaments in Belgium, 7, they all did at least one advisory citizen panel, which were inspired to some extent by the G1000. So no formal political uptake, if you wish, but then a very diffuse support eventually.
Great. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you see as the transformative potential of public deliberation?
Yeah, because remember we said that there was the country was in a political crisis. There was no government, no federal government, so to speak, because French-speaking parties and Dutch-speaking parties were not able to find an agreement. And so people were saying, well, we should be scared of putting them together, and if you do this with citizens, it will be the same. What happened is that we were lucky enough to have a quasi-experiment to some extent, because we didn't have enough facilitators who were able to speak both languages. So 1/3 of the table were actually French was spoken, 1/3 were Dutch, and 1/3 it was the 2 languages. Not that people were citizens were bilingual, but the 2 languages would be used because there was an interpreter. What is interesting is that in the unilingual table, the perception of the other community went down. But for those who were seated at where the 2 languages were spoken, then the perception stayed about the same. So it acted as a buffer. So it's very different if you deliberate with people like you, and then you tend to speak about the other or against the other when you speak in front of the others, and then your perceptions stay about the same.
So do you think there's some really interesting findings in the book for other countries facing sort of crises of democracy?
Yeah, very much so. And of course, I mean, if there is a crisis, I mean, there is no easy solutions. And of course, the solution should be on the ground, and we should not copy paste something. But indeed, there are interest in that. It works, but it should be on ground. It should be adapted to the setting where you are in. But it does work.
Did anything surprise you?
Well, that so many people would be interested, and to see the people actually deliberating, which is a very difficult exercise. I mean, we're not used to this. I mean, many people say that since they were back at school, I mean, they've never been through this such a very, very demanding and tiring effect, but they did it and they liked it. So that's very promising.
Great. So where can people get a hold of this book?
Online and some libraries to some extent, but it's pretty much available everywhere.
Great. So just to let everyone know at home, so the book is called The Legitimacy of Citizen-Led Deliberative Democracy, the G1000 in Belgium, and it's by Min Reuchamps and also your colleague Didier Caluwaerts, who's the Assistant Professor of Public Policy at the Free University in Brussels. Don't forget you can order this for your own library as well. And it's been so great chatting to you today. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to seeing you next on the next book drop. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.